Hey everyone, Yan Zhao. Tonight we have the famous Peter Simeti, creator, auteur, master of the indie comic scene. How you doing?
I think you meant to get a different guy.
No, I'm pretty sure it's you. Pretty
Okay.
sure.
All right. I'll try to live up to that intro. Jeez.
So backstage before the stream, we quickly talked about keeping it light. So I have a two-parter question. Back in 2019, you had I kind of remember seeing a tweet. Can't find the tweet now, but you said, "I can't wait until 2019's over. 2020 is going to be great." So now, now, two-part question: A, do you miss 2019 at all? And B, will you take responsibility for cursing us all?
Well, it depends. I mean, for some people, this year has been great. It's
That is
not
true.
really, great, but I think that's kind of relative for everybody. For Alterna, we've had our bumps in the road. Definitely, this year has been a little bit of a torture test, but at the same time, it's also been a really great year for us. So it's kind of hard to complain too much, and especially given everything that is going on, I find it's very difficult to actually complain in a genuine way, considering things could be so much worse.
That is true. That is true. So, speaking of how good things are for Alterna, right now we have the Alterna Because You Demanded It Indiegogo. So, can you walk us through the campaign real quick?
Yeah, sure. So we've got all kinds of different things on here. Obviously, we've got some great stuff like the fully loaded collector case is probably the most popular perk that we have. It comes loaded with all kinds of different comics, 15 comics to start with, 18 blank variants, 34 side pocket collector cases, 17 front pocket collector case inserts. So it's all kinds of great stuff on here. But then also on top of that, as the campaign has been progressing, it's been unlocking new issues. So now we've got actually 29 comics available for you guys. So if you do get that, if you do get that, you've got an instant upgrade. You almost double your comics. And you don't have to do anything else. You just sit back and get bonus issues for free. So if we get to 23,000, we actually add on another blank variant and another issue too. So we're very close to that. And at that point, I mean, you just get those things added on for free. Same thing with the reprint bundle too. That's for like $30. You would get actually the 15 comics that it started with, and then all the bonus issues. So if we reach 23,000, you get 30 issues for $30.
That is a pretty good deal. So unfortunately, it seems that with life canceling Halloween, there is no Alternaween. But would you say that the reprint bundle especially is a pretty good replacement?
Yeah, it is a pretty good replacement. That's the thing too, with no Alternaween this year, it would have been our third one. We've got this campaign basically in its place. And usually with campaigns, we kind of put something, a couple things actually new with each one, not just the thing that the campaign is centered around. So this year, instead, we pretty much put everything together that we would have had as bonus offerings on a campaign. And we put them all together with one campaign. So now we've got the blank variants, the collector case inserts, a hoodie, a t-shirt, and the beanie, the red beanie's coming back. A lot of people have been asking about that for about a year or so. All kinds of different things that the readers have requested over the years. And they can even get a sketch commission too from 9 different Alterna artists. So there's all kinds of great stuff on here that, we really couldn't do if we just did Alternaween 3. Mm-hmm. But I'm finding still a lot of people did want to have those Alternaween trick or treat bundles. So we actually are probably going to offer them on our site on alternaaccess.com. We'll probably have like 1 or 2 different options up. And if people want to get those for Halloween, they can do that. But as far as running a whole campaign around it, there just wasn't enough demand this year because of the way everything is going. Certain people that they're not even going to have a Halloween really in their neighborhood.
Yeah.
So this way, at least if someone does want to still do something like that, or they're still having Halloween, or they want to get something maybe as stocking stuffers or something too for the holidays, they can get a jump on that, and they can get the Alternaween bundle that we'll have up there. We'll probably put it up on Friday.
Very cool. So going back to 2019, this is not to say it's your first Indiegogo, but in some ways this seems like it's new territory for Alterna to be at least periodically offering large kind of starter packages, like everything you need to get into the Alterna universe.
Yeah, it's been nice because we wanted to put out some kind of, maybe once or twice a year, like an event kind of a campaign. This way people could actually jump on board in a big way, or a lot of our current readers can get something new, something exclusive. Or in a case like this where we've had a lot of issues sold out, some of them have been sold out for over a year, they're able to actually go in there and get something. Let's say they wanted a collector case. They could actually then go into the add-on section and pick and choose whatever issues they're missing, and just do an a la carte type of system, and just get whatever it is that they want specifically, without having to feel like, well, in order to get the 4 issues I'm missing, I got to get this whole reprint bundle. Right. They don't have to do that. Instead, they could just pick even the exclusive comic that's just $5, and then go in and add on whatever it is they'd like to add on.
So do you see this sort of, I don't know, becoming a new standard in the industry?
I think so, in a way. I don't necessarily know if it'll work for everyone, because there is a lot of different things logistically with crowdfunding that I think certain people aren't going to necessarily adapt to it or be able to, run a campaign effectively, especially fulfillment of a campaign. But I think we're going to see more and more people actually go towards this system and at least gravitate towards it, or try it out. I think, why not? I mean, it's a great way to get something directly to people, especially to your customers that you have, but also to grow, to get new customers on board too, by offering certain items that make it easy for them to just kind of latch on and get in there when you have something going on. Now we've got, of course, alternaaccess.com. So some people are wondering, well, why don't you just do all these kinds of things on the site instead and sell direct right on your store? Honestly, it's just not as fun. It's just not as fun to do that compared to having a crowdfunder. And so as a crowdfunder, we'll bring in a different audience too, that almost always translates into an audience that then starts ordering from us directly on our site. So it's kind of a nice way. It's almost becoming a modern spinner rack in a way, I'm finding, because a lot of people are just gravitating towards crowdfunding to see, well, what's the newest, latest thing? And, who's putting it out? And am I interested in it? Whereas I'm finding a lot of stuff in terms of going to the comic shop or going online to, I don't know, maybe Midtown Comics or something like that. There's so many comics. There's so many things. There's not enough information really about them. And you just can go there and maybe pick up the comic or whatever it is. But on a crowdfunder, you can get all these personalized, special, unique, limited kind of items that you really can't get anywhere else. So a lot of people are kind of making that, in a way, like their virtual spinner rack. And I love the idea of being able to use as many different kinds of avenues to get books out there as possible. So the fact that we have this and people are gravitating towards it, and people have been using crowdfunding obviously for a while now, but really people have been just stepping up all over the place in terms of just the creators making it special, and then the readers actually seeking things out. It's become a really viable way for, I think, people to make comics. Whereas before, if we were just to rely on the traditional system, there's just no way you can continue. It's very difficult. And if anything, in some cases, it's not really great for growing any kind of business. It's the opposite.
Yeah. So in some ways, do you see this almost as a step back? So at the end of the 80s, the industry decided, we're only going to sell in these specialty stores that, no one who has no interest in comics will ever step in. But I remember as a kid, I got a subscription to Transformers and GI Joe every year for my birthday for a few years, and in some ways, this kind of makes me feel that way, where it just comes to my house. It's so much easier than actually going out and braving crowds and smells.
Yeah, I mean, it's it definitely is a bit easier to do something like this, but I mean, at the same time too, I love the fact that comic shops are out there and there are comics in the world that are just in a store. I love that, but it's also just the way that we've seen different things going on in the industry in terms of decreasing the footprint, the retail footprint across the board over the years, really limiting what even the retailer could do, let alone what the publisher could do. The distribution system has kind of shrunk the whole industry into this weird kind of Thunderdome-ish place. And retail is already sort of like that, where you fight over shelf space. But in terms of the comic shops, space is so incredibly limited, and we've got more books out there now than ever before. And between the stores having a smaller physical footprint, and also just in terms of the footprint of stores in general, they've shrunk even since Alterna got into the industry in 2008 with Diamond. Stores were around, I'd say, 4,000 or so at that point. It's almost about 1,900 shops at this point now. So they've shrunk incredibly. And at that point in time, I'd say there's about 500 or so comics coming out. Now, when we left Diamond in April, I'd say around February or January, there was close to 1,000 comics out. It's just the math doesn't add up. Comics need to be in more places. They need to get in front of more people. And if anything, they didn't have the internet then. We don't have spinner racks necessarily right now in convenience stores and places like that. So it depending on how you use and leverage the internet for you, it can replace that feel of the spinner rack and having discoverability for your comic. But it's each part of it, there's always the pros and cons, because even when we were in newsstand, I found a lot of that too was also pay to play. I found a lot of that was full returnability, no accountability. So that created this weird system of, the retailers got stuff in, but they sure as hell didn't really care about it past that point. And, so that made growth really difficult at that point too. I even found that there were cases where they just didn't even care about which comics they were scanning. So certain books would scan in the negative numbers that we had. We sent them like 1,500 and we had negative 1,575 on the returns.
Ouch.
Because they weren't scanning properly across the board. Now, if you have a title that, if all your titles are $2, let's say, that's not too big of a deal. But if they're scanning in the $2 comic when they should be scanning in the 99-cent comic, now you're losing money, and because they're mis-scanning. So just coming across different problems like that along the way just didn't make any sense for us to keep it up, because newsstand was basically just a really good source of advertising. We did get readers from it, but it wasn't anything close to saying, oh yeah, no, the sales are good enough that we're breaking even. That wasn't even happening. Something like a 30% sell-through rate. So if they were ordering like 100,000 and we were selling through like 30,000, that's not too bad, because your economy of scale is different.
Right.
But if they're ordering like 2,000 or whatever it is, there's no way selling 600 of them is going to be advantageous. So the whole system is just more and more pushing people, I think, towards doing this direct-to-consumer market. And if anything, I think we're seeing the fact that a lot of people like that. A lot of people enjoy that they can get these comics directly from the creators and the publishers.
Yeah, I have to say, too, one of the things that not surprised me, but I don't know, seemed rather well thought out to me about the Because You Demanded It campaign is it seems to be like all together. Like, you get the books, you get the holder, you can get, you can order the cards, who your favorite artists will draw, whatever you commission. I mean, it seems a lot more all-inclusive. I'm not quite sure if that's the right term outside of
Yeah,
vacation, but
I guess in a way, yeah, you could say that because it does have a lot of different things where it touches
Mhm.
upon this. You could literally go in there and kind of pick up kind of everything you need, I guess, in terms of Alterna, especially in terms of if you're starting out. The collector case is a great thing if you just want to store your comics to and have them in a nice spot, easy to get to. You could have many different uses for that case too. And then also on top of that, I mean, you can get different apparel from Alterna. You can get all the comics and start out and not having to ever really read Alterna before. You can actually go in there, get the first issue bundle or the reprint bundle, which has a lot of first issues, and become kind of accustomed to, you know, well, what are the stories like at Alterna? And you go, oh yeah, okay,
Mhm.
this is what they're like, and these are the ones I like. So we have a big variety of titles at Alterna where a lot of publishers, especially indie publishers, I think they'll focus on certain genres, or it's just for kids, or it's just
Mhm.
more mature audiences. Whereas at Alterna, we have all kinds of books for all kinds of people. And then the way that you could tell is if you look at the book on the barcode, if you see them in a store, it's mentioned if it's for everyone, if it's for teens, if it's for mature readers. And then the way you can tell, of course, online is we actually mention it. It says all ages. It says for teens. It says for mature. So there's all kinds of different things that we offer. And I think that's what people have really enjoyed about Alterna too, is that they can actually pick up multiple different kinds of stories from us.
Yeah, is that something back in the day that you intended when you said, "All right, I'll start publishing stuff," or is it something that just kind of happened and you were like, "Hey, that's a good idea"?
No, that was always something that I wanted us to do. I wanted Alterna to be kind of, and it might seem weird to say this, but I wanted Alterna to be sort of like the island of misfit toys. I wanted us to be the dead zone of comics. I wanted us to be, we're not really indie, we're not really mainstream, we're not, you know, just putting out horror, we're not just putting out sci-fi. We have a little bit of something for everyone. And I wanted us to be a place that, you know, if the story was good, if the story was well made, if the creators cared about it, I wanted to be able to publish that book and not say, oh, well, it doesn't necessarily fit Alterna because at Alterna we only publish X, Y, and Z. So I always wanted to put out something that we could have a lot of variety because honestly, my tastes are very eclectic. I have tastes all over the place in terms of the kinds of stories and things that I like. So to just go and put out a certain specific genre, it didn't really appeal to me as a publisher either.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Ryan Wynn was nice enough to stop by last week, and he and I were talking a little bit about how it almost seems like there's no entry point for younger readers, which is sort of the opposite at Alterna. There, it seems like there is a very nice gradated path where you could take, where maybe you start out with Baron Rat and Mr. Crypt, and then as you get a little older, you're maybe Gods and Gears, and then at some point Blood Realm. And
Yeah, it's nice because the readers can actually grow up in a way with reading Alterna. There's so many different kinds of titles. So yeah, we've got something for everybody, and it's great to see parents even reading these books with their kids too. And then the all ages books, they're not just kid friendly or anything like that. It's what we mean by that when we say that they're all ages is that they're truly for readers of all ages. So they're appropriate for kids, but they're not meant for kids. And that's, I think, a big difference in terms of what we see being published nowadays that's specified as all ages. Usually that's kind of become now like a 4-letter word where it's all ages. Oh, it's kind of dumbed down. It's really simplistic storytelling to the point of there's no real conflict. The characters don't have much depth, that kind of a thing. But at Alterna, I mean, all of our all ages books, they're not like that. Even Mr. Crypt and Baron Rat, those characters have layers and there's subtlety to the story, and there's jokes that maybe they don't get necessarily now, but they'll get in a couple of years. But it's not inappropriate for them. It's a lot of the same kind of stuff of what I think we all grew up with. So I hate seeing stories that talk down to kids. They're boring. The kids don't like them because they know that they're being talked down to. At the end of the day, they don't end up appealing to anybody. But for some reason,
Yes.
they put that stuff out, and it's not successful. But they keep putting it out anyway. So I don't know what's going on.
Well,
But that's them.
I think a lot of that problem is they like the YA model, and the problem with YA is it's aimed at women in their mid-40s who very rarely read comics, which unfortunately puts those books at a loss.
Well, yeah, I think oftentimes too, I think a lot of publishers, they go, well, we're probably going to be trying to sell books to people that are going to think, oh, I don't want a kid to read this. There's too many themes in here that might be too mature for them. And they oftentimes, adults for some reason, it's the same thing too when they think about certain things. They look back and think, oh, well, my experience, that wouldn't be like what it is for a kid today. I don't want a kid to grow up reading. I don't even know if people would recommend Goosebumps or something like that for kids nowadays. Horror it's a pretty big genre for children. They tend to like darker stories. They tend to like evil characters and characters that are good. So it's simplistic in that way, but they still like the conflict. They still like to see people overcoming things. They still like dangerous situations. So I think a lot of parents, especially at least from what I saw in conventions and doing different signings, they'd often be, I think, a little too worried. I think a little too worried about what the kid might read, even though the kid would be over there tugging and being like, no, this is okay. I can read this. This is fine. And a little bit too much of that mindset of, oh, no, I don't know this is going to be appropriate for kids. But I was watching Nightmare on Elm Street when I was 6. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, we definitely grew up in a different generation.
Yeah.
But even comics wise, I was reading some old X-Men books, the Claremont, Mark Silvestri run. And a lot of it was like, dang, a lot of those ladies were very sexy, but there were all sorts of themes that as a kid, you don't necessarily know. But there's like Cyclops, who's kind of dumped his wife for her twin and who was his real love. All these like crazy themes that took years to build up. And I don't know. And it just seems like that's lost in most modern books that are aimed at kids.
Yeah, there's a lot of dramatic elements. I mean, even back in the day, I remember Stan Lee describing a lot of stuff where it wasn't necessarily that they wanted to publish things that were violent. He wanted to put out books that had action. So it'd be different to say, okay, well, having a fight, having a battle was different than putting out a book where, you would chop some guy's head off and like blood is spurting and things like that. And that even went beyond comics code type stuff too. That just was a storytelling aesthetic. Because if anything, I find that a lot of those books from back then have more action, and I guess you could even say almost more violence in some ways than what the books have today. So it's strange to see how things get so watered down. But I mean, the more and more corporate both of those bigger companies became, I think that was kind of inevitable.
And unfortunately, that sets the pace. But speaking of setting a pace, so I remember before, at one point, I think maybe the last time you were on, we had talked about how, like in general, Alterna would have like a series of 4, and then later there would like be another season or something, but it would start again at 1 to 4. And now you're on to more permanent numbering, right?
Yeah, so that's a side effect of leaving Diamond. When we were in Diamond, we really needed that number 1 boost, whereas going out on our own, not being within that system, not having to worry about cancellation because a book dipped in sales or whatever it is through the distributor, we don't have to go back and renumber. And if anything, I found that not only do the readers appreciate that system more, the retailers actually appreciate that system more too, because it becomes easier to sell. Issue 6 is issue 6. It's not issue 6 of volume 2 or volume 3 or whatever it is. So all these different things, you can just go, okay, that's the numbering, the story's continuing. And then you could even look back, and if you get to issue 20 or 30 or 40 or whatever it is, as a reader, when I was growing up, I got into comics into their hundreds, 200s. And I thought, wow, I like this issue. There's so many more that came before. I have to try to find these. So we don't really have a lot of that nowadays. A lot of it is kind of just, it's harping on the number one, getting very gimmicky with things, bloating the sales with variants and things like that, creating this false sense of a market, especially a collector's market, by putting out all of these things that are just supposed to feel limited and whatever, just to make sure that the sales are up there. It's not necessarily concerned anymore with gaining readers or holding readers. It's more about just the flash in the pan stuff every single month, which I find is so dangerous to do in an industry like comics that depends so much upon loving the stories and the characters, and that's the reason you stick with it. So you didn't need that incentive of a gimmick or a variant or anything like that to stick with a book. The reason you stuck with the book was because you liked the book that you just read. And a lot of the places now that I think a lot of the different publishers, I don't want to necessarily say that they're doing something bad, because I think that they're trying to do what they can do in a market that is kind of working against them. But I would love to see more of them kind of speak up about the fact that, why are comics, why are they disappearing from so many places? Why are they being told no one wants to read comics? And that's why they're not having the distributor go into different stores. They're not having them put out those number one those $1 comics that are reprints at a lot of different publishers. Why they're not in like a Dollar Tree or a Five Below or a Dollar General. If you're the only distributor in comics, really, you have massive leverage. Don't tell me that you guys can't get into those places. It's because you guys don't want to get into those places. So if it's something like the retailers would be upset because they're going to be putting those comics in stores, well, those are reprints. Those are reprints. Yep. They should be in more stores. So you're not even putting the new stuff out there. You need to have comics in more places than just the comic shop. And I think if indie creators are going to see, if I can't get into the store, I'm going to open up a web store. I'm going to go online. I'm going to do crowdfunding. I'm going to market and promote to get my comic out there. Imagine if the whole entire industry had that mindset too. It'd be very different right now for comics.
Yeah, I definitely can't disagree with that. I think in my opinion, a lot of these companies are not making good decisions, but they were dealt bad hands to begin with. To me, looking back, a lot of this stuff started in the 80s, where we sort of widowed the whole comic industry down to superhero comics as opposed to a variety of genres that it was before. Then they decided to only, distribute to very specialized stores. It just seemed like a recipe for disaster that you could kick the can down the road and, we're finally there.
Yeah. And especially not being proactive about feeling like, this could kind of go at any moment. So let's make sure that we're always innovating. We're always trying to stay ahead of the curve. The fact that there's no easy single point, even for a website to order comics at this point. I think the easiest one might be like DCBS or Midtown. The fact that Diamond still hasn't even integrated a website that has a ship to store feature where you could just have people go right to the page and get the comic they want and get it delivered to the store they want to go to, and then that sale goes to the shop. They could absolutely implement something like that, given enough time and enough money in terms of actually developing the web space. Alterna could do something like that. I mean, we could probably do something close to it now. So why the main distributor in comics, the only distributor in comics, isn't realizing, hey, it's 2020. Stop giving people a big giant phone book to order comics out of. They need to actually get with the times. Stop allocating those funds in those ways. I don't know. It's nothing that's going to grow the industry. And I think there's been so many moves over the years that have been about, but why do that? We don't really need to do that. We don't have any competition. Well, your competition is here. It's crowdfunding. It's removing the middleman, which is them.
So I'm kind of curious too. This might sound a little strange. Do you think in some ways manga will actually be a saving grace for the future comic industry? Because I was thinking about this a while ago. While we've been talking about the sort of downside of mainstream American comics, manga has been flooding the shelves in a lot of places, and it makes me wonder: is this a way to sort of keep people used to reading sequential art so that in, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, do you think the American comic book industry can sort of pick itself up off its feet, start to find an audience, and start to find its way back into stores?
Yes and no, only because of the fact that still the American comic industry is so hell-bent on associating itself with just being superhero and things like that. Comics in America, for the most part, it suffers from, if I were to say, do you like movies? You would say, oh, what kind of movie?
Mm-hmm.
If I were to say, well, do you like comics, to the average person, they would just assume superhero.
Right.
So it would just be about if like superheroes or not. If comics can truly have a true, that's the funniest part is there's so much harping on diversity and things like that nowadays. We really need to harp on the actual diversification of things, which is the different diversification of ideas and thought and characters and things like that. Not so much what's on the outside or the superficial, but what's beneath.
Mm-hmm.
So if the comic industry, I think, was more prone to harping on that, which it is very diverse at this point. It's been diverse for a while.
Right.
But for some reason, the marketing in comics has been so bad that, I mean, honestly, even my parents thought that Stan Lee created DC Comics. So, they thought he created everything, because even DC wasn't smart enough to realize, you know what, we have to get our own kind of spokesperson out there too. They just, that's Stan's out there, he's doing his thing. Stan kind of sold comics to everyone, even if he didn't realize it. He just sold comics. It wasn't even just Marvel. Just getting into comics was just like, oh, okay, you listen to this guy talk, he's around, and you get into comic books, whether they're Marvel or not, because he's talking about them.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like no one else really was talking about him. So it's really strange to see nowadays that the whole industry is kind of hell-bent on this kind of path, even though there's so much opportunity right now for comics to be in more places than ever before, to have success more than ever before. And we've talked about this kind of thing ad nauseum, I think, and when I say we, I mean everyone, in terms of, the movies, the games, the merchandise, it's everywhere, but the comics are next to nowhere. So that's a big problem. And why that's a problem, I don't know. It's a publisher issue. It's a distribution issue, because the comics, obviously, in terms of the IP, it's become ingrained into modern society worldwide. So why not the comics themselves?
And do you think smaller companies like Alterna, or even I don't know, to some ways, this now seems like a golden age of comics, but at a very independent, personal creator level.
Absolutely.
Do you think those together will be able to push I don't know if push the right word, but sort of expand it back to like it was in the day? I mean, even my mom would tell me she read romance comics in the 1950s. So do you think we can get back to a state like that where American comics are sort of all genres, where it's just sequential art and then you pick what flavor of story you like?
I think so. I think right now we're at the precipice of a lot of different change occurring. I think because so many people are out there creating comics, so many comics are being made, different kinds of comics are being made, and there's different ways to sell them. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of different genres pop up, a lot more readers actually joining into the fold as opposed to before. But I think, it's a great time to be a comic creator, and it's a great time to be a comic reader. More than I could honestly say, more than the past maybe 20, 25 years. At this point, I think we are experiencing some kind of an indie renaissance. I think the more that there's corporate comics that are putting out watered down kind of storytelling, that's not really creatively taking any risks. I think we're going to see a lot of people gravitating towards indie creators telling stories of vision and stories that they're passionate about, that are different. that are just inherently different because they don't have corporate oversight. And there's a lot of ways to get those comics out there. So I think we're going to see a lot more people not only becoming readers, but also being inspired by these creators that are out there doing what they're doing and doing it in a different way. We're going to actually see, I think, more creators having not only a better quality of life because of it too. Instead of being tied down to doing a monthly book, maybe they could do 2 or 3 books a year and earn more from doing them. And we're going to see a lot of creators going, you know, I don't have to do as many because there's so many other books out there. And the readers are also going to feel the same kind of way too. And they're going to say, there's so many books. I'm kind of glad these things aren't coming out every single month from every single creator I like, because there's so many creators, there's so many books. I want to try them all. I want to support them all too. Right now, seriously, I'm very excited about the future of comics. And as much as I think a lot of things have been happening that have been frustrating in the traditional sense with distribution and the bigger publishers, in terms of indie, it's mind-blowingly amazing. And it's just great to be an indie, not just an indie creator, but even an indie publisher, and finding new and different ways to get books out there to people who love comics. And I think as long as we focus on that, and it's not about, you know, making your comic and just only trying to get it as a stepping stone into a Netflix or a movie or whatever it is, but making a comic because you love to make comics and you want to tell the best comic story you could tell. You want to tell a story that you've wanted to tell your whole life. Now is the time to do it. And I love seeing people do that. It's been great.
All right. So if we have a little time, let's do a lightning round. Unfortunately, I have no timey Tim, but we'll soldier on. So I asked for people to send in questions before, and here's some of the ones I got. Number 1, it's said that socks with sandals is now a fashion trend. Are you pro or against socks with sandals?
Don't honestly care either way.
Ooh. That's a bold move. Now you just get hate from both sides.
I'm used to it.
Ninjas or pirates?
Oh man, pirates.
All right. What is the best 2020 Halloween costume?
Casey Jones.
Oh, interesting choice. All right. Which is the worst Halloween candy to get? Candy corn or Raisinets?
Definitely candy corn. I love Raisinets.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I'll eat boxes of Raisinets.
Okay. I have a question.
There's worse things than candy corn, though.
For Halloween?
Yeah.
What's worse?
Like those things that no one knows what the hell they really are, that are just like these taffy looking things that are wrapped in black and orange that no one seems to ever eat ever, and they just recycle them into next year's bowl.
Right. I was going to say I was going to get some mystery candy from the 99-cent store. Like it has the Chinese writing on the package and it's like American candy, but it's all spelled wrong.
Yeah, that's pretty bad too. Definitely.
I have one person who's asking who would win in a fight, Log from Legends of Log or the Green Lantern?
Man, that's a strange one to try to figure out. I would honestly say I really think probably Green Lantern would win that fight if it's an all-out fight. I don't know if the Log could stand up to that.
It took me a while to get it, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, the original Green Lantern's weakness wasn't yellow, it was wood.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess if we're going with that, you know.
But against Hal Jordan, maybe not.
Yeah, I was going to say if he's maybe up against like Firestorm, where he can't really manipulate organic material.
That's true.
Then he'd be screwed. But I don't know. That's interesting. We could certainly write it, though, so that Log wins.
So I do a lot of Dungeons and Dragons videos on this channel as well, and I did have someone ask, have you ever thought about adding to the Alterna publishing line into publishing other things, for example, tabletop games or something like that?
I don't think that's something that we're gonna do from Alterna, but I'm certain because Alterna's creator owned, so I'm sure there's gonna be creators that actually want to go that route. I know Rob Geronimo of Blood Realm; he's always thinking about it, and people are interested in that. But I know he wants to get the whole book out there and done before he starts fully exploring any kind of adaptation or game or anything like that. So I think that there's going to be creators that pursue all kinds of different things, and they should.
All right, and then I had one reader ask. It's a two-parter. The sunglasses are to filter out blue light, right?
Yeah, that's honestly how a lot of it started, but now it's at this point where I'm finding my eyes are just sensitive. They're getting more and more sensitive to light in general. So being in front of a monitor all day, doing all kinds of computer work, I usually need like a day or two completely away from computer work to feel like my eyes are all right enough that I don't need to use any kind of either a blue blocker or sunglasses or anything. It's getting more and more ridiculous. I get like kind of like a headache sensation. And if I really just go at it for like a day or two without, I get ridiculous migraines. Even though my glasses too, they've got like a blue type of filter on them also. It's just not enough. And my eyes have always kind of been sensitive to light, but I'm finding more and more between doing the streaming and then doing computer work. It's just been ridiculous in terms of not being able to operate and function properly. So I'd rather just wear sunglasses on the stream, and anyone can kind of theorize whatever the reason is for why I'm doing it. But I don't feel like I'm going to have a mind-numbing headache for the whole next day. So I'd rather just wear sunglasses and just that's it. It's not a glamorous reason or anything like that. It's but it is what it is.
Well, part two of the question was, if they are for filtering out blue rays, when did you become the blue Cyclops?
I guess maybe 6 to 8 months ago.
Okay. And did you also fall out of a plane and hit your head?
No, but that would have been awful, and it would also explain why I absolutely have a fear of heights. Or more a fear of falling from high places.
All right, so our time is getting close to up. So what is new that you got coming up on tap from Alterna? And if you were a consumer, which level of the Indiegogo would you back?
Well, the $99 featured perk is definitely the best value you're going to get. But if you're 100% just new to Alterna and you don't know where to start necessarily, and you don't want to take the deeper dive into that fully loaded collector case, I would go with the reprint bundle. That's a really great value. You're going to get more and more comics as we unlock them. If we reach 25,000 before the campaign closes in 8 days, we're going to extend the campaign another 30 days because some people have asked for that. And we're going to have more unlockable issues too. So if you have the reprint bundle or the fully loaded collector case, you're going to get more and more issues as we unlock them along the way too over those 30 days. So I would recommend for any kind of first-time reader getting the reprint bundle.
And when you're reading those comics, what is the appropriate or what is the best apparel to match with the reprint?
Either you can get a hat, the beanies, or a t-shirt. Or if you're someone, I mean, honestly, you can get them all. If you're someone that likes the feel of a nice, warm, thick, snuggly hoodie, you can get that. So it's up to you.
And it's always good to have an extra hoodie. So when your girlfriend steals yours, you still actually have one you can wear.
There you go. Strategic.
All right. So after this, you are going to be going on Kelsey Shannon's channel, I believe, right?
Oh, I came on here after Kelsey's.
Oh, you came
channel.
on here after.
So I was I was on Kelsey's, and then I came here right after.
Oh, well, dang it. totally misread that email or Twitter message. My bad.
It's okay.
Oh, all right then. So what's sort of your the grand Alterna plan going forward? So are things back on track now? Like, I know production schedules were interrupted for COVID. Are they more or less back?
We're still about 2 months behind. So we're getting books in probably sometime early next week. They're shipping out. I believe they actually shipped out today. So we're going to get a new batch of books next week. Then those orders are going to go out. There's hundreds upon hundreds of orders that need to go out. So we've got new books on alternaaccess.com/pre-orders that you can get right now. I think it's 8 new issues you could pre-order, and they're all affordable. They're like $1.99 each. So you can actually pick those up there, but we're still 2 months behind because of the way COVID is working out. And it's, not the greatest thing in the world, but at the same time, again, I don't have too much room to complain. I'm glad we're just still here and the readers are supporting us. But moving forward, I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of Alterna creators using crowdfunding, people like Ryan Wynn, Rob Geronimo, other creators as well. Keith Gleason, he had used crowdfunding as well for his Mighty Mascot series to fund the next couple of issues. And then Alterna is going to shift a bit, I think, into being more of like a republisher, so that the first way that you get a lot of these books is going to be through the crowdfunder from the creator. And then we're going to split it up or do whatever, reprint them as single issues. But we're going to be focusing solely on the newsprint, the single issues, the Alterna Giants, that kind of a thing, moving away from graphic novels officially anyway, and just going forward in that direction. I want to make sure that we can still have affordable comics out there for people, because we are growing our readership directly. So excellent. Yeah, and I think it's still on the back of these affordable issues, and then the creators could actually still do something special by making these creator-owned, their own versions that are really nice and limited and exclusive and premium, and they could do something fun with it. Whereas with Alterna, it'll be more about the newsprint, the affordability, getting out there to more readers, and so on. So I think it'll help grow their bases too, to have that kind of a thing. And also it's just going to be something where I think we can give them some kind of value working with Alterna, as opposed to the fact that I think some publishers at this time, they might feel like, well, you should tighten your grip a bit more on the creators, because you really need to make sure that they know that they need you. I don't really work that way. I didn't found Alterna to be a company that does that to creators. So I want to give as much. I've wanted to give more freedom to creators over the years, but the current system we were in didn't really allow for a lot of this kind of stuff. So to me, we're actually able now fully, for the first time since 2006, 2007, before we had distribution, we're finally able to run things the way we want to run things. And I think that's going to make a better experience for the readers and a better experience for the creators too.
Yeah, well, and the other thing about tightening down, that's how we got Image Comics. Do we want another Image Comics? That's the question.
Yeah, and then that's the thing, is that I want all of the creators at Alterna to build their own fan bases, to build their readerships, to build their own brand, to be the face of their own books too. And I want to be able to help have them grow, but not to be someone that wants to keep them, stay behind the scenes. I'll just be the face of everything. And, you kind of just make your book, and people will more just associate, that book, Alterna. I want them to associate, no, that book, you, the creator. Alterna helps out. Alterna's there. It's a unifier, but it's not what's synonymous with your creation. I want the creators to be the people that are synonymous with their creation. So it's taking a little bit of time to have that rebranding for a lot of these different creators, because they are so used to that kind of a system still, especially with us being in Diamond and things like that. There is way more emphasis on the publisher as opposed to the creator when you're in this kind of an industry. But I wanted to kind of shift a bit, so that at least they know who's making the books too, and not just who's publishing the books.
And How about your roster? Could you, well, can you? Any plans to increase the numbers of books that you're publishing, or are you planning on keeping it more or less the way that it is?
Well, probably for 2021. I mean, if things weren't the way that they were, I think we would have been increasing to maybe 6 or 7 books a month. But at this rate, I think it's going to look more like staying the course, 4 or 5 books a month.
That's still a pretty good amount.
Yeah, yeah. And as long as we could just kind of stay where we are and do what we're doing and be of service, obviously, to the creators and offer something great to the readers, I'm fine with that. Growth and things like that, that'll come naturally. And I've never been someone that felt like, no, every year we have to do better and top the previous year. And it's like, well, only if you really should. Otherwise, you put yourself in a weird state where you're forcing that kind of growth. You're making too many books. You're overwhelming the readers, and you're taking on more than you really could. So this year, obviously, I mean, we've had delays and things like that from both the supply chain angle and the production angle. But hopefully 2021's better. We'll see. But either way, I have to at least act as if it won't be better. And if anything, maybe it might be worse. So I have to make sure I'm taking precautions here and there.
Do you ever think that you'll get to more monthly publications? Like, for example, it came out on a Wednesday, or maybe a independent creator who's publishing with Alterna who maybe has enough material for 12 issues in a year. Can you ever see that happening, or is it better to do every couple of months?
I don't see that happening. I wouldn't really want that to happen, to be honest. I think that puts people in a very weird predicament, because in order to have a monthly consistent schedule, you need 6 to 8 issues on backlog.
Right.
Which means they have to have all that material done. They have to have all of it kind of paid for, depending if they're hiring a creative team as well. And then on top of that, you have to then sit there and go, well, I hope the sales come in and that they're good. Otherwise, that goes from being a monthly to being the book gets canceled and never gets made again. I think that kind of system is also putting undue and unneeded pressure on creators, where they're not going to be able to tell the best possible story that they could tell. It's different if Alterna is in a situation where we say, okay, these are our characters, we own them, we're hiring people, and here's editorial oversight. But Alterna is not like that. Alterna is creator-owned, it's creator-driven. So I don't want to turn it into, a factory farm of creators that are just pumping out stories just to pump out stories, regardless of whether or not they want to, because eventually it turns into, it's more about the schedule than it is about making a great story. So as long as the creators are out there and they want to do something awesome and they want to actually have quality of life and actually make a living too from comics and have time, the most important thing in this whole equation is having time to promote, which is in this industry, no one really promotes properly in comics. It's only very recently we're finding a lot of indie creators are starting to promote properly and promote often too. Before that, you didn't really see a lot of that.
Not since the 90s. I mean, I do remember those Image guys were all over the place back in the day on TV shows. And I mean, there wasn't internet back then, but yeah, it does kind of make me wonder what took so long.
Yeah, it was more about, again, it was that corporate control of not wanting to have another Image Comics come up. And if anything, that's shooting yourself in the foot. You need superstars. You need people that put the butts in the seats. You need people that bring readers to the shop. If you're a company, you need superstar creators. You need people to know about them. You need them to know about the books that they're making. So to feel like, we don't want people to know, let's say, we don't want them to know Todd McFarlane so much as know Spider-Man. We don't want them to follow McFarlane's work from book to book. It's like, well, why not? He's going to sell more of that book, and then they're going to know that character because of that creator.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not like you're just going to only end up following the creator and just, everyone leaves Spider-Man after Todd McFarlane leaves Spider-Man. That's not going to happen. So it's this weird kind of corporate mentality, though, where they don't want you getting too big. They want you to know your place. But that's unrealistic. And if anything, that's bad business.
Can't disagree with that. So I've got a question from Blasby Industries, who I see in the chat, but he sent a question on Twitter. Is the campaign deadline going to be extended? Did I hear that right? I want the reprint bundle, but I can't buy it until the end of the month. Totally stoked for this to be true. So no pressure.
Yeah, so right now we're at, let me see, refreshing here on my screen. It says we're at 22,041. 8 days left. If we reach 25,000, we're going to extend the campaign another 30 days. So 8 days left to go. We have to raise like less than 3,000. I think we can absolutely do it. We're on the pace to do that anyway. And so yeah, at that point, we'll extend the campaign another 30 days, and we'll have a bunch of different unlockables and whatnot there too. I'm really not that worried about hitting that point. I think we're absolutely going to do it.
Excellent. And so this is something you said that you think it would be a semi-annual event, maybe not in the exact same format, but Alterna coming up with sort of crowdfunding with things that people have been asking for.
At least like an annual event, I think, something like this. In terms of getting books back in print and having some new things offered and things like that, I definitely think we could do something like this like once a year. More than that, I think it turns into just kind of too much, because we do sell so much direct too. So I think it turns into too much, not only for us, but too much for the readers. So you do need things to sell out. You do need the readers to go, you know what? I really missed getting that title. I wish I had it. Okay, there's some kind of a buildup. If you just do these sort of things, I think too much, it just you really need absence to make the heart grow fonder, I think. So we don't want to overwhelm people. We don't want to overexpose the whole. We're going to keep going back to print on everything all the time, because honestly, we're not going to go back to print on some issues, either because they're no longer in contract or because the demand really isn't there. So all these issues we're going back to print with, it's because the demand is there. If it wasn't there, and if we weren't having people asking about them, we wouldn't even be putting them back to print. It would just be like, okay, we're doing the giant, and then you can pick up the story then, and that's it. But in some cases, we'll put the giant out, and then everyone goes, well, I want the single issues too. Mm-hmm. So we've had a lot of that with like Blood Realm and things like the upcoming Red Koi giant. Red Koi 1 and 2 are basically almost sold out. 2's been sold out, but 1's almost there. People have said, well, I hope you get number 2 back, because I want to get the giant, but I also want to get the single issues. So we have to listen to them.
And going forward, can you see more, not second editions, but second printings or third printings or fourth printings?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see the fact that that we're getting more readers from that. The giants are great, but at the same time, again, I'm finding there's so many people that they'll miss out, and they don't mind getting the giant. They want to get the giant, but they also want the single issue. I think it's just like it's a collector mentality too, I think. But on top of that, alternatives are the issues are so affordable. It's kind of like, well, if you like the cover, even you feel like it's worth it. $2 is worth it. I like that cover, and that's what we want. We want people to feel like they're getting a good value for whatever it is they're paying for at Alterna, and this is a great way to do it. And I love comics on newsprint. That's just comics and newsprint to me. It's just synonymous. I hope we can do this for forever.
It should be. I was going to end it but I just thought of one other thing real quick. So I was talking to Ryan Wynn about colors, and one thing that I was surprised about is how well that Alterna books look, even on newsprint. So he and I both like the old flat color, newsprint aesthetic, but it seems like, clearly there's a difference between glossy, high weight paper and newsprint, but the newsprint, it does seem to be able to hold a lot more ink and give you a lot more variation in the colors. Do you think that maybe, I don't know if Renaissance is the right word, but with these new technologies that enable you to do more with newspaper stock, can you see like sort of specific aesthetics developing for that?
Yeah, I guess in a way, I think the only thing that wouldn't reproduce great on newsprint might be very painterly styles, where the
Yes.
gradation between colors is so slight that you can get this muddying effect. So you really need contrast to be there with newsprint. But other than that, I mean, it's all just about prepping the files correctly and getting the color settings from the printer and making sure that the ink coverage totals aren't overboard. And otherwise, you're going to get ink that can offset and actually imprint like silly putty to the other side of the page. And that's going to be slightly here and there with newsprint as it is. That's just the nature of the beast. But it could get really bad if your ink coverage is, let's say, 300 and it should be like 220. You'll start getting full-on imprints of just all the black line work just pressed on the other side. And then you can also get things like fluting, where if there's too much ink, when it dries and it goes through the oven to basically dry the paper, since paper is a natural fiber, it shrinks the same way that a really wet wool sweater in a hot dryer will shrink those fibers. You can get the paper to shrink too, and it creates that waviness, and it kind of warps the paper the whole way, and you have a whole book that's warped. So you have to make sure the ink coverage is fine. But I mean, we do all that at this point in time, and this is just old hat to us. The first couple of issues, it was like, oh, what are we doing? Like, I don't know how to do this kind of stuff. And the printer that we were using in the very, very beginning, they gave us completely wrong settings. I went against everything that I thought I should have gone, and done as a graphic designer. And I listened to them, and I was like, never again. We're not using you guys. You gave us completely wrong specs. And we went with a different printer, and then they helped us out, and it sounded a lot closer to what I thought it should have been. And the books have looked great ever since. So yeah, newsprint, that's the funniest part is so many things we see nowadays are still on newsprint. Even photographs that can look stunning on newsprint. And yet it's so weird to hear people say things in the comic industry like, oh, you can't make the art look good on newsprint. I'm like, yeah, well, this hamburger that's in the grocery store flyer on newsprint, that looks good to me.
Yep. All right. Well, I think we should probably wrap it up. I can imagine your eyes are getting quite tired of holding back your laser beams. So any final thoughts, last words?
I just appreciate that you spent the time promoting the campaign and talking with me tonight. Thank you. And everybody in the chat too. Thank you guys as well. And thank you for all the support and all the great reviews you've given Alterna over the years. It means a lot.
They're a lot of fun. I can't wait to start getting back to doing more. 2020 has been a brutal year.
Yeah. And hopefully, we'll see, I guess, how the rest of the year goes out in 2021. But, hopefully it's not too bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm expecting armed security compound to come up somewhere in there. All right. But Peter Simeti, thank you very much, everyone. Go check out Alterna Comics Indiegogo Because You Demanded It campaign. And if you're looking for anything specific that's not on there, go check out alternaaccess.com for all your comic buying needs. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. Good night. Click like, subscribe, and we'll be back hopefully soon.
Thanks, everyone.